So first of all, thank you again for those people who are just joining or just getting the connection on board. My name is Robin Thornton, and I'm the host today. I've been joined by Ed Harris, who's the managing partner for the Americas. He's going to be doing the presentation today. And I'll allow Ed to introduce himself just in a moment or two. My colleague also, Adrian, is one of the panelists here today. You should be able to see at the bottom of your screens, if those of you that are familiar with Zoom, there is a chat box, there's a Q&A box. Please feel free to drop any questions that you would like us to answer. We'll do our best to get through those. Obviously, we can't guarantee we can answer every question straight away. But today's webinar should take about 20 to 25 minutes for the overall presentation. And then we've allowed kind of 10 or 15 minutes at the end for the Q&A for people so we can give some kind of feedback and response. And then my colleagues will obviously follow up on a bespoke nature with anybody individually that's got further requirements. So I think it's probably a good time to introduce Ed Harris. And Ed, over to you if you'd like to give us a little bit of information.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you everyone for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. As Robin mentioned, so I'm Ed Harris. I am managing partner for Holborn for the Americas, but I also get involved in representing the residency and citizenship by investment matters to the board. I also happen to be someone who moved to Portugal myself last year. I'm British, my wife's American, she's from California, and we moved here last year, so we now live in the Algarve in southern Portugal with my three girls. So also have some first-hand insights that I can perhaps sort of help pass on, and if need be, happy to sort of field any of those questions in the Q&A at the end that Robin mentioned. So as hopefully everyone is with us now, I'll sort of briefly run through the agenda for today. I'll start off and just give just one slide, just quickly overview as to who Holborn Assets are, and also mention another company, Archway Private Wealth, because some people on the call may know us as Archway, particularly if they're from the US. Also talk about why the Portugal program is so popular and really picked up in popularity over the last couple of years and very much a hot ticket at the moment. Then run through some of the key details about how the Portugal Golden Visa program works, and in particular, the changes that were made in 2022 and what that means for clients now. We'll talk through then some of the real estate options that are available that we've been using this year after the rules changed. Talk a bit about the future of golden visas in general and more specifically in Portugal. And then, as we say, hopefully have time for some Q&A at the end. So without further ado, Holborn Assets, we're an award-winning global wealth management firm. I'm not going to read out all the lines on the slide, but 20 sort of plus years old, offices around the world. Major focus for offices are in Asia. Actually used to, I lived in Hong Kong for 10 years and ran that office for a while. In the Middle East, in Europe, we've got 5 offices now in South Africa, and also offices in the US. We deal with lots of different types of investments, insurance, property, and we have a specific division we call Holborn Pass that deals with investments with global mobility benefits, i.e. residency, citizenship, passports that come with those investments. We don't just do Portugal Golden Visas, so that's specifically what this webinar is about. Last year, we helped clients in 9 different countries, so 9 different schemes around the world. Although specifically with Portugal, we did 143 last year. I think in total, the number of applicants last year was somewhere around 1,400. So we did about 10% of all the Portugal Golden Visas last year. And if we bear in mind that about 40% of the market is for Golden Visas comes out of China, and we don't focus on the mainland Chinese market, it means that for the sort of ex-China market, we're doing about 1 in 5, 1 in 6 of all the Golden Visas in Portugal last year. As I mentioned, there's also this business, Archway Private Wealth. So Archway Private Wealth is the US subsidiary of Holborn Assets. As MD for Holborn Assets, I'm also CEO of Archway Private Wealth, and Robin and Adrian are investment advisor representatives in the US. So we are a regulated US investment advisor. That business itself is quite a niche business. We focus on either looking after clients of ours from elsewhere around the world that have moved to the US, or looking at helping people living in the US manage their UK pension assets. So that business itself doesn't get involved in residency and citizenship by investment. It's not a US regulated product. So we're here talking today as our sort of positions within Holborn Assets. So I mentioned residency, citizenship by investment, or RCBI, a couple of times. So just to define at the very outset what that is. It's when an investor is making a contribution to a foreign country economy. And there's usually a sort of number of different ways that might happen. Real estate purchase is obviously one of the most common. Could just be a donation to the government, or sometimes they have sort of specific charities that you can donate to. It might be setting up a business, employing some people, investing in the economy in that way. Investing in investment funds, buying government bonds, leaving cash in one of the country's banks. So a range of different ways that you can make those donations. But in exchange for those contributions, the investor is either getting a residency permit for the residency by investment. So that's allowing them to live and work in a country as a resident, or become a citizen in some different schemes where you have full citizen rights. And in most people's terms, that means having a passport. The industry for RCBI has grown dramatically over the last 10 years. Just some little numbers on the right-hand side. 10 years ago, just under $3 billion of investments being made. Last year, the estimates are somewhere around $25 billion. So it's grown nearly 10 times in the last 10 years. I am definitely not going to run through this slide line by line, but I wanted to broadly lay out some of the schemes that we do with clients and did last year with clients, but also really just to show the difference between citizenship programs and residency programs, which are on the right-hand side. So the citizenship programs tend to be dominated by the small Caribbean countries, where you're typically making a donation to the government in exchange for getting a passport. These schemes tend to be more popular with people who have a passport that doesn't allow them to travel visa-free to many countries. So, one of the big benefits of getting these passports is a relatively quick way of doing that. So if you do need to get a passport that enables you to travel better and gives you different options, or you're trying to abandon a passport in the country where you currently have the passport, then this is sort of been an effective way of doing that. But you are typically just making a donation and then sort of paying in exchange for getting the passport. The exception to that is Malta. Malta does get you, an EU passport and has lots of sort of associated benefits that go with that. However, as you'll also see, the donation that's required for that is 760,000 euros. So the best part of $1 million to get the passport. So we did do Maltese passport last year in that way, but it's not a terribly popular scheme for those reasons. So more popular are the schemes on the right hand side, which are the residency programs. And of these, Portugal, Spain, Greece are the popular schemes in the EU. The key differentiator, and one of the reasons why Portugal has become so popular, is this line, which is the physical stay required for citizenship. As you'll notice, all the others require you to stay for several months a year or a number of years consecutively. Basically, you have to become tax resident and move there in order to qualify for the programs. Portugal is the sort of outlier there and stands out because you're only actually required to spend 5 weeks in the 5-year period. That's not 5 weeks per year. That's a total of 5 weeks over the 5-year period in order to qualify for citizenship, i.e. applying for a passport at the end of your residency program. So I'll leave that slide there for now. And this is very much a slide that we talk through in more detail on a one-on-one with clients. In terms of how Holborn sort of fit in, we're there from the beginning to the end, from helping prepare the initial paperwork. Again, I'm not going to talk through every single line of this, but all the different stages along the way, right through to the point where in 5 or 6 years' time, we're helping you apply for your passport and then delivering it to you afterwards. So why is Portugal one of the most popular destinations where people are trying to get golden visas and move to? Pretty much every survey that you can find has Portugal either the most welcoming or the most friendly country to move to. And I can certainly echo that, having moved here myself. I've been very fortunate in my life. I think I've traveled to 40+ countries. I've lived in 3 different continents. I've worked in 3 different continents. And Portugal and the Portuguese people are, without doubt, some of the most genuinely friendly people I've ever met. Also, as sadly a purely English-speaking person, 60% of Portuguese people do speak a second language. Most of them, that second language is English. It's actually a much higher percentage amongst younger people as well, and even higher if you are staying in the sort of Lisbon, Algarve, Porto areas. So generally friendly place. Also ranked in the Global Peace Index, the 3rd most peaceful country. Peace Index isn't just crime, it's also sort of history of conflict and other sort of various different features, but it does reflect the general mood of the country in Portugal. It's a very laid-back, relaxed place to come and live. For those that are interested, the number 1 and 2 places on the list are Iceland and New Zealand. Both beautiful places, but a little cold, and none of them have golden visa schemes. So Portugal's as good as it gets. Pretty much every survey has, again, Portugal in one of the, if not the best place to retire to. That's typically a combination of weather, cost of living, healthcare, friendly people, all the things that are on this list. Definitely one of the best places to come retire to. The non-habitual resident tax regime is something I'm going to talk about on a slide a little bit later, so I won't go into too much detail here, but definitely one of the benefits that Portugal has and differentiates itself certainly from the other European countries. It does have an excellent public healthcare system, so that's free public healthcare. There is a private system that runs side by side. So we have private health insurance for my family. I know we have a lot of American people on today, so just as an idea, the premium I pay for our private health insurance here is about somewhere between about 1/4 and 1/3 of what I pay for my private healthcare in the States. And in American terms, there's no deductible, and the co-pays are $10 typically. I actually went and had my bloods taken today to have my cholesterol checked and a sort of general health check, and I think I paid €7, so $8 or $9 to have my my bloods taken at a private hospital. And again, pretty much everyone speaks great English, receptionists, doctors, dentists, all very easy and accessible. Has a great education system. So here it's talking about the free education system, which is taught in Portuguese. But most of the schools here, again, in the major areas of Porto, Lisbon, Algarve, are well used to having non-English speakers come in. So they often have a separate class, which they categorize as Portuguese as a second language class, where they have extra help to help kids get integrated. There's also excellent Portuguese private schools, which again offer more support, and a range of international schools as well. Also, just to say, it is a beautiful place. The cities are fantastic. Lisbon is one of my favorite cities in the world. I think in the Condé Nast guide this year, Portugal was voted the #1 place to visit in the world. Porto was one of the top 10 cities. I think it was 8th on the list. It really is a beautiful place to go and live. Everywhere I drive around the Algarve, there's oranges everywhere by the side of the road, amazing wine. The food is incredibly fresh. Portugal actually has the highest food safety standards in the world. But we also have Amazon. Portugal gets free deliveries with Amazon Prime from Spain, Amazon Spain. So you can also get pretty much everything that you really want to get your hands on as well. So great place to live. So how are people actually getting here? Well, if you're British and you manage to get here pre-Brexit, great. If you live in the EU, then with an EU passport, you can come and live here. But if you don't fit one of those situations, then a golden visa is a great way to do that. The scheme started 10 years ago, over 10,000 approved applications, 27,000 people, which means that on average, there's 2.7 people on each application. The first citizenships, because it takes about 6 years for the passports to be given out, started about 4 years ago, and it's raised a lot of money as a foreign direct investment within Portugal. Applies, anyone non-EU can apply. It's really a case that if you live in the EU and you have an EU passport, then you don't need to access the Golden Visa scheme. You can just move there anyway. And you can include your spouse, dependent children, and dependent parents as well onto the application as well. So onto the passport itself. So to qualify for the passport, you have to make a qualifying investment, and we'll talk about what those are on the next slide. I mentioned at the beginning, you have to do 5 weeks of stay during that first 5 years. That's actually divided up. So in the first 2 years, you have to have spent 2 weeks in Portugal. And then in the next 3 years, you have to spend a total of 3 weeks. You can do that all in one go, or come 1 week a year. The choice is yours, but a total of 5 weeks split into those two segments. Like all the European Golden Visa programs, you do have to pass a language test if you want to apply for a passport at the end of the Golden Visa program. It is A2 level, which is classified as a beginner level test, which is actually lower than most of the European countries. You have to take a B1 level, which is a business level, so more advanced. The test itself, it's a 55% pass mark. It's not designed to catch people out. It's just to show that you've made an effort to try and integrate yourself. Children under 10 to 12 take an adapted test, again, to make it easier for them to pass. And Portugal is the 7th most widely spoken language in the world. Over 400 million people speak Portuguese, so it's quite a useful language to learn anyway.
Ed, could I just ask you a question there? And we've had Erica asked a question regarding the language. I mean, how do you, is there online courses, or how?
Yeah.
How do you, in practical terms?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Does one do that?
Yeah, good question. So yes, there are online courses. So of course, everyone can take their own online courses. There's plenty of YouTube videos. Before we moved here, my kids were busy on YouTube trying to learn bits of Portuguese. So, but there are formal courses you can take online and formal test centers. I think there's 35 locations around the world, so approved test centers where you can take the test and get that sort of ticked off as and when you want to. Of course, those courses and test centers are also in Portugal, so you're also free if you don't happen to have a test center in your country. Then on one of your visits to Portugal that you have to do anyway, then you can take the test at that point. Okay,
so these are the online learning centers like Oxford Learning or Prometric or those types of. Okay, got you. Great, thank you.
It's okay. So you do your 5-week stay. So you make the investment, you do your 5-week stay, you pass the language test, and then after 5 years, you can then, if you want to, request citizenship. You can carry on just renewing your visa every 2 years. You can also apply for permanent residency as opposed to citizenship. So there's a couple of choices, but for a lot of people, the goal is to get the European passport and Portuguese passport. So we expect most clients will be requesting that citizenship after 5 years, and you end up with, it's either the 4th, 5th, 6th, depending on which sort of review you're looking at. But one of the best passports in the world, visa-free travel to 185 countries, and obviously importantly, once you have a European Union passport, you can live in, retire in, work in, study in, start a business in any other European country. So you can't do that with your residency permit, but after 5 years, when you get an EU passport, then you can live in any of those EU countries. So again, apologies to anyone who's not from America that's on the call today. Some specific sort of stats that I pulled out just about the sort of popularity of the Portuguese Golden Visas in the US. So on the left-hand side, the chart is showing us over the last 12 months the increase in applications. Big build-up at the end of the year. Could have been due to people trying to get in before the rules changed in January, but actually the January figures were the second highest on record anyway. So I think it's more a case of just increased desire, increased awareness. And that's reflected then on the right-hand side of the actual overall share of Portuguese Golden Visas that are going to US applicants. Just a few years ago, it was 5%, whereas now sort of 18%. So that's sort of one in five applicants are actually from the US now. So I think it's the third most popular country or nationality applying for Portuguese Golden Visas. So these are just some of the sort of key milestones again, so people are aware as to what the process is. So at the beginning, so the first couple of months is a case of gathering data together, gathering information together, and submitting the initial applications to CEF, which is the immigration department in Portugal. There's some processing then that goes on in the background, and after between 6 and 12 months, your golden visa is approved, and you get a EU residency card, Portuguese residency card, which is issued for 2 years initially. At the 2-year period, you apply just to have that renewed. Again, in year 4, apply to have it renewed, and then in year 5, you have the option, as I mentioned, to apply for either permanent residency or citizenship. And the passports typically take about a year before you actually get your hand on the EU passport. There is a more detailed slide. Again, we go through on a one-to-one, where we talk through particularly that sort of first 2 stages, the first few months, talking about stages that we go through and what information is required. But again, we will tend to do that on a one-to-one conversation rather than today.
Ed, what happens if, I don't know, you may be struggling with the language test, you don't, for some reason, want to take a passport, you know, you're happy with a residency and, you know, Schengen access around Europe? I mean, do you have to?
No, absolutely not a requirement to do that. You can carry on just renewing your card. Permanent residency has I think you start the language test, but it's the A1 language test, which is very much sort of the basics of the language. So you have 3 choices essentially, depending on say whether you particularly want the passport, or you're just happy, as you say, having access to travel, you don't want to take it, or planning, struggling with the language. But it's not a case of year 5, you must pass the test or you lose rights to live here. That's not the case at all. You have a number of different options.
Okay, and I've got kind of an associated, Jonathan asked a question regarding the limitations of stay within, within the country. So as far as my understanding of it is, once you've got your residency, you're allowed to stay in any European country for 90 days within the 180. Is that correct? The rolling 180.
Yes.
And obviously then if you then get your passport, if that's the route you want to do, obviously then you can stay as long as you like in any European country.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So yeah, once you've got your golden visa approved, so on this slide, sort of the second stage, then that gives you the right to travel and stay anywhere in that sort of Schengen area, the 27 EU countries, for 90 days in any 180-day period. So technically, therefore, it's roughly speaking 6 months a year, but you can't do the 6 months in one block. You have to sort of do 3 months, leave for 3 months, and then go back. So yeah, that's the 90-180-day rule.
But that obviously excludes Portugal, because
so of course excluding Portugal, obviously you can live in Portugal. So theoretically, you live in Portugal and you want to go and spend 2 months in Italy, and then you go back to Portugal and you want to go and spend 2 months in Switzerland or Austria, fine, no problem, go and do that. You want to go to France, Spain, you can travel sort of relatively freely within it, within the EU, with that, say, 90-day for every 180 restriction.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. So talking about the non-habitual resident scheme, I have to do the sort of disclaimer that, you know, we're not tax advisors, but this is a well-established scheme. I also speak as someone who does have non-habitual resident status myself as well. So one thing to be clear about, this is a taxation program, not a residency program. So it's actually a separate process from a golden visa. So just because you've been given a golden visa doesn't make you NHR, and just because you've got NHR doesn't mean you happen to come in on a golden visa. So they're two separate programs, but they are linked somewhat or have shared benefits. So this program was established actually a few years before golden visa program, and has been largely unchanged since. So in brief, it gives special tax status for a 10-year period from when you are granted the NHR status. So the question is, when do you get the status? Do you get the status, or you can apply for it the first year you are tax resident in Portugal? So not when you apply or get your golden visa, unless you happen to get your golden visa and come and move to Portugal at the same time. But this happens when you are tax resident. So if you get your golden visa and you move to Portugal in 3 years' time or 4 years' time, that's the point you would then apply for the NHR, and your 10-year period would start from that point, not from when you got your golden visa. So what is the special tax status? It means that if you happen to have income from Portugal, so domestic Portuguese income, then you pay a flat 20% tax rate, not the often significantly higher tax rates that you would otherwise pay. I think the highest tax rate in Portugal is 38%. But more significantly for people on the golden visa programs, it means that most non-Portuguese income is not taxed in Portugal. So that could be self-employment income, dividend interest, not that you get much interest nowadays, but maybe on corporate bonds, you get interest payments, capital gain on property, rental income, another big one. So these things, as long as they are taxable in another country, then Portugal will not tax them. So again, we have mainly Americans on the call. Americans have worldwide taxation. So as long as you are keeping your US citizenship, then all your income is going to be taxable in some way in the US. You might be below a certain threshold and not pay any tax, but it's taxable, and therefore Portugal would not tax it. Another example, I know we have a few people from the UK here, or even people who just want to invest in the UK. A good example is in the UK, dividends from UK stocks are not taxable if you're a non-resident. So I think it's called disregarded income. So if you invest in a big, stock in the UK, it pays dividends. The UK, it is taxable in the UK. They just choose not to tax it. Portugal won't tax it because it's taxable in the UK. So actually you don't pay tax in the UK or any tax in Portugal. So there's lots of interesting angles here. And again, this isn't a sort of tax seminar, but this is obviously one of the major benefits of Portugal, is that people are able to come and move here and not get caught up in a particularly aggressive tax regime, which is very much not the case with some of the other European countries that we mentioned. There is a flat 10% tax on non-Portuguese pensions. But again, if you're in the US, then you would pay some tax in Portugal, but you would get a foreign tax credit you would then use to offset other tax that you're paying in the US. So again, it should end up being tax neutral for you. Portugal has a lot of other double taxation agreements with other countries that contain similar features. And one last point is that there is no tax on cryptocurrency profits. So there's been a lot of sort of things in the press here in Portugal about people moving here, having made lots of money on cryptocurrency and then moving to Portugal. So we talked about, the qualifying investments that you need to make. There is a choice of 5 in Portugal. In no particular order, the donation to the arts. So this is a €250,000 donation, so no return, you just write a check out. It's actually, as well as not being very popular, I think there was only 1 or 2 done last year out of 1,400. So not a very popular option. It's actually quite difficult to do. So I won't spend too much time talking about that. One that has grown in popularity over the last few years is the invest in a venture capital fund, a private equity fund. The qualifying investment has changed. This used to be 350,000 euros as of January 1st this year. It's now 500,000 euros. It's something we can consider with some clients, but for those from the States, investing in a foreign fund makes it tax punitive. There's something called the PFIC regime, Passive Foreign Investment Company regime in the US. Generally speaking, holding and owning investment funds outside of the US, which this is pre-tax punitive. So this isn't something certainly we look at for US clients, and often not for other clients. Clearly there's risk involved. They are private equity funds, venture capital funds, so it's certainly sort of higher up the risk scale, and tend to have lock-ins that exceed the requirement for the golden visas. So often sort of 7 to 10 year lock-ins on the investments. You're also able to just transfer some money and put some money in a Portuguese bank, but by some money, that's 1.5 million euros. Used to be 1 million euros, again, increased this year. Euro has negative interest rates. Obviously, inflation is as problematic here as it is in the States and elsewhere in the world at the moment. Obviously, you have counterparty risk with the banks. So again, not something we're typically looking at with clients. You can start a business. Used to be 5 employees, now 10 employees. Not again terribly popular. You have to pay minimum wage. There's quite heavy sort of social security taxes here as well. Clearly, there's risk to the business. You have to keep the business going for the 6 years. So again, not something that's terribly popular. So therefore, it comes as no surprise that real estate ends up taking the lion's share of the market. And by lion's share, I mean somewhere typically between 80 to 90% of people getting a golden visa are doing it through the real estate route. So this has also seen some big changes this year. So I put together this little table to try and make this clear. So there are 3 categories of property, whether it was built in the last 30 years, if it was 30 years old and being refurbished, and 30 years old being refurbished and in a low density area. So the big change was that residential property in Lisbon, in Portugal, in most of the Algarve and most of the coastal areas of Portugal, i.e. the Silver Coast, which is the sort of again, popular area that runs between Lisbon and Porto. Residential property no longer qualifies for a golden visa in any of those categories of properties. So very popular over the last few years was people sort of trying to find their dream home, buy their dream home and get a golden visa with it. Well, if that dream home happens to be in any of those areas, Lisbon, Porto, Silver Coast, Algarve, chances are you can't get a golden visa anymore. You can still buy residential property in those 3 categories if you buy in what's classified as the rural interior and the islands, so that's Madeira and the Azores. And if you happen to want to go and live there, this is your sort of dream location, then it's absolutely the route you can go with. But we are ultimately a wealth management firm, and we look at the investment side of this. And in those areas, there isn't really a large domestic or investor market for properties in the sort of 200, 300, 400, 500,000 euro range. So you really are buying into the success of the golden visa scheme. And if something was to happen to that golden visa scheme in the future, then I think you'd have to assume that the value of your investment might be under pressure. So then we move to the category at the right, which is commercial property. So commercial property anywhere in Portugal still qualifies under those 3 different tiers. And therefore, that's where we see the opportunity for clients now on the real estate option is in commercial property rather than in residential. So just putting some sort of figures on the comments that I made. The red bar is real estate. So sort of 1 year in as real estate sort of became an option, immediately started dominating the marketplace. The orange bar that you can see growing is also real estate, but this is renovation real estates, which sort of started really 2016, 2017, and now is actually the majority of the the real estate market, at least in part because it's a lower entry point if you've done a refurbished property. The yellow area you can see growing is the venture capital funds, as I mentioned, not something typical we'll do with clients that are US taxpayers. But as you can see, even without that, you're probably looking at about 80–85% of the market is still in either new build real estate, which is the red one, or the renovation properties, which is the orange one. So at this point, I've talked you through who Holborn and Archway are, why Portugal is such a popular scheme, the features of the Golden Visa application, what the qualifying investments are. I now want to just introduce some of the projects that clients of ours have been investing in over the first couple of months of the year under the new rules. This is very much presented for your information. Obviously, we can't give personalized advice on a webinar. Different clients have different motivations, are after different project features, want to invest at different investment levels. So, this is something just to give you a flavor of types of projects that we're looking at. And then we would then follow up on a one-on-one basis at a later point. So, starting off with the Royal Obidos Resort and Spa. So this is an existing 5-star beautiful hotel. You can go on Google Maps and see the hotel and see the 5-star reviews that people have been giving it. It's a gorgeous setting about an hour north of Lisbon. And specifically, we're talking about these buildings at the front here. This is the hotel behind, and the spa is here. These are the hotel residences that sit in front. So Obidos is about 45 minutes north of Lisbon, so it is on the sort of famed Silver Coast. It's one of just a handful of 5-star resorts in the area, very close to areas that, again, people might be familiar with, Nazaré, where the largest waves in the world are, and the surf championships are held. Obidos town itself is just 5 minutes away. And the Obidos Lagoon, which is sort of an inlet of sort of low, calm water, is just 3 minutes away. It's a very popular place for people to go because the Atlantic can get a little cool and a little rough, whereas the lagoon is much quieter and the water is much warmer. So it's a very popular place for people to go to. So Obidos, as I said, is a 5-star resort. It was a new build, so although it's commercial, so it qualifies for the Golden Visa. It does sit in the 500,000 euro category in terms of the investment that needs to be made. It's a mix of studio and one-bed apartments. So studios are 350,000 euros and the one-beds are 500,000. If you get a full title deed, you will own one of the either the studios or one-bed apartments of those hotel residences. As mentioned, it's a brand new 5-star resort. It was designed by Philip Stark. Some people may have heard of him. He's designed some of the top hotels in the world. So it's a very high-end resort. The golf course, you can kind of just make out in those photos that sits again in front of those residences, is a PGA golf course. It was designed by Severiano Ballesteros and it's home of the Portuguese Open. So when the European Tour is in Portugal, this is where they come and play the Portuguese Open. As part of the arrangements, if you purchase one of these properties, you're also welcome to come and stay free of charge for up to 6 weeks a year in your studio or your apartment. So that's another nice bonus. So the way the financials work out for Royal Obidos, and again, I'm anticipating there's probably going to be some questions on this, and we'll either try and handle them today or do them one-on-one. But the operator of the hotel will pay you a rental income of 5% per year for 5 years, so 25%. But they will pay that upfront as you purchase the property. So you'll pay for the property, and they will also then give you a check back for effectively 25% of the value. Now, the way that this would work for the Golden Visas is putting capital of 350,000 in to buy one studio isn't enough because you have to put 500,000 in. So if you're buying the studios, you'd have to buy 2 studios. So that would be an investment of 700,000 euros. But because you're then getting the rental income back up front from the developer, your actual capital requirement is only 500,000 because you're going to write a check and they're going to give you a check back, and the net difference is going to be 500,000 euros. If you just buy the single one bed for 500,000, then again, there's an exchange and they will give you back the rent. So the capital requirement is just under 400,000. The reason why it's not 375,000 is because there are some legal fees that go in at the beginning as well. So two studios, capital required is 500,000, and for the one bed, it's just under 400,000. The developer will also give you the option, if you want, of buying it back from you once you've attained the citizenship or a residency status in year 6. So it's optional, you don't have to do it, but they will buy it back at list price. So that means if you did buy the 2 studios, for example, your list price is 700,000. Your capital that you invested was 500,000, and you're getting 700,000 back. So you're already making 200,000, so a 3% profit when they buy that back. So from an investment point of view, this is definitely one of the strongest in terms of investment return. There's another option. You could sell it on the open market. You don't have to sell it back to them at list price. If the prices keep going up even stronger, then you're welcome to sell it on the open market. You don't have to sell it back to the developer. Or indeed, you can keep it and enter an agreement with the hotel management where they continue to lease out the unit for you, and you have a profit split with them. And they estimate that that's roughly a 7% return each year. So sell it back to them at list price, sell it on the open market, keep it and stay in it if you want to, or lease it out with the hotel and just get the 7% rental yield. And then just a couple of slides just to show you, these aren't artist impressions, these are, because the units are completed, these are the real photographs, sort of beautifully decorated inside as you'd expect from a 5-star resort. So I was then going to talk to you about the Ourasol apartment hotel, which is in Albufeira. So this is actually about 10 minutes from where I live in the Algarve, which was an offering that we had at the 280,000 price point, because this is a refurbishment in a low density area. So this is sort of lowest possible entry point in terms of capital required. As of this morning, we had 60 apartments available, but we only had this morning, we had 1 left. So I've actually hidden most of the slides now in the presentation for this, because my expectation is that probably by now, that last unit's probably gone. So I mention it just to show that this was something we had at the 280 price point. It's 1 minute walk from the beach in Albufeira, which is a very popular tourist destination. But I won't spend too much time talking about that today. We do have another development in that same 280,000 euro price point, also in the Algarve. So this is a hotel development in Lagos. So Lagos is sort of western side of the Algarve. So if they're not too familiar with the geography, Lisbon's up here. It's about a 2.5 hour drive up to Lisbon. The main airport for the Algarve is Faro Airport. It's about a 45-minute drive from Lagos to Faro. Lagos is a booming town at the moment in the Algarve. I'd say it's probably the fastest growing town at the moment. Beautiful marina, beautiful beaches. Very trendy downtown. It's very popular with sort of the surfer crowd, lots of great restaurants there, lots of great culture, so a lovely place. So this is a rehabilitation, so actually there's some buildings in this area here that are being knocked down and cleared, and actually 2 new hotels are being built here in association with Hilton. A little bit different this one, so there is cash paid out from the developer, but actually they're going to basically cover the costs of the various taxes that would be normally involved in buying a property, sort of in lieu of rental income. So beautiful boutique hotel it's going to be. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. There is a buyback guarantee in year 6, or when citizenship happened to be obtained. So as Robin mentioned, if you don't happen to take the language test or do it in year 6, you do it in 7 or 8, that's the point of time they would buy back the units from you. But there is a backstop of 12 years because this does have a compulsory buyback. Ultimately, the developer and Hilton want to have all the units themselves, so they will buy it back at some point in the future. Again, slightly different this one. So instead of having direct deeds, so in the Obidos project, you have a deed to one of the residences. This is a co-ownership model. So everyone who's invested the 280,000 owns, I think it's 0.5% of the total project. The developer here, Mercant Properties, big company, been doing this for 30 years. They only do these types of hotel developments and just with the biggest players. That's Marriott, Hilton, Intercontinental Hotel Group, and the Wyndham Hotel Group. So great developer to be working with, and obviously partnered with Hilton in this particular project. So as I mentioned, there's actually 2 hotels being built on the site. So there's a 4-star hotel and a 3-star hotel next door, both in this area here, effectively overlooking the marina. So this is very close to downtown. There's actually a little pedestrian bridge here in the middle of this waterway, where you can just walk across there and get easy access to all the cool things that there are to do in Lagos, restaurants, downtown facilities in terms of banks and so on, local markets, and just a little walk south this direction is. You're onto the first of many beaches in this area. The Sarok beach is again a beautiful beach, award-winning, lovely, clean beach and beautiful waters. So a fantastic destination in the middle of the marina in Lagos. So just a couple of pretty photos, usual hotel features, and nice areas inside. So I'm not going to run through these slides in particular, but again, I'm just going to sort of very quickly go through these. We have other projects that we do as well. So we've done already a couple of these this year. This is a project with the Hyatt Regency in Lisbon. This is a very unique location on the waterfront in Lisbon, looking over the main bridge, the Vasco da Gama Bridge, I think it's called, and the statue of Christ in the background. So a very rare location to have. I'm sure we'll have tremendous appreciation possibilities as say spaces at a premium here. Worth mentioning, you have to hit the cash investment of €500,000. These properties are all over €500,000. They start at 820 and go up to 2.5 million. But you are able to raise a mortgage for some of that, as long as you are yourself putting in at least the 500,000 yourself. Then you are able to get a mortgage for the rest, and we have people we can speak to help out with that.
Just quickly going back to that one in terms of the mortgages, what's the mortgage market like in Europe? I mean, rates, terms. How does it work in Portugal?
It was a surprise. So I just bought a house here and got a mortgage. So as a resident here, so I don't have a EU passport, so I have a residency card for 2 years that I renew. I was able to get it off the back of my US credit report. So the bank here just asked me to show that I was resident here. I sent them my US credit history, and they were happy to give me a mortgage, 65% of the value of the property at 1.3%, I think it is, fixed for 20 years. So wow, very competitive. Now, if you're not resident here, they do charge lower rates, high rates. I think they're in the sort of 3-4% mark. But again, very much then dependent on the individual. But yes, we've done them with clients and can help out. So it is still quite a competitive marketplace.
Great, thanks.
And then, sorry, moving on to the next one. Again, so this is a new development in the Algarve. This one is in the $500,000 price bracket. Prices here start at 1 million euros and go up to 4.5. When I first started looking at this project only a few months ago, the prices, these properties were not that expensive because the appreciation, this is a unique location, is tremendous. So again, from an investment point of view, This is one I think is going to be a tremendous investment for the next 5 or 6 years, and you'll continue to see excellent price appreciation. So we mentioned these as to give an idea that we have a full range of options available, and these are just the ones we have at the moment. I know we have a new project coming out, I think it's next week, that's going to be in around the 330, 340 price range. So the benefit of working with Holborn is so we do roughly 1 in 5, 1 in 6 of the non-mainland Chinese golden visas. We have a big sort of throughput of applicants, and therefore we're able to attract developers and get a wide range of projects to suit different clients. Some clients are looking for the lowest possible capital in, some are looking for the highest possible return. Some people want something that they might want to keep afterwards, like the Obidos project. Some just want to have that buyback. So we do have the full range of projects available. So then just to mention the future of golden visas, and I probably could have added a couple more slides in just with what's been going on in the last few days, because again, this has been sort of brought to the world's attention with what's been going on in the Ukraine. But even before then, these were just headlines that I pulled out over the last few days. I think most of these were dated sometime in February. Not every country appreciates places like Portugal and Greece and others offering golden visa schemes, and often try and pressurize them to, if not stop them, then adjust the rules and make criteria stricter. So this isn't something we see happening imminently, certainly with the Portugal scheme. So this isn't a today issue or tomorrow issue, but it is something just to bear in mind that I know some people I've spoken to in the past are sort of undecided. They're not planning on moving for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So they just sort of, do they do it now or do they wait? By all means, you can wait, but by waiting, you are running the risk that even if the golden visas haven't disappeared completely, the qualifying criteria may have changed. I've run through how the criteria have changed this year, increasing the amount that you've got to spend on the venture capital funds, increasing the amount of money to put in the banks, taking away residential property in sort of the key areas. It's certainly possible that they continue to make changes like that along the road. So it is something that if you are interested in, just be aware that waiting indefinitely has risks associated with it, and perhaps now is the time to speak to us one-on-one, and we can understand more about your situation and circumstances, and see if this is something that perhaps you should be thinking about doing sooner rather than later. So that's they're all the slides. So hopefully there's a few questions there, and we can
yeah, Ed, thanks for that. I mean, I'm a little bit conscious of time.
Yes,
but you've done a very detailed presentation, and on behalf of everybody, thank you very much. And I'm sure you could do with a drink, preferably a Portuguese red wine. I've had a couple of questions come in. I've got a couple coming in on my WhatsApp from existing clients as well. Perhaps if I just answer one of Martin has asked a question of whether commercial hostels or hotels, giving the impression perhaps it's more rural, would be included in these types of golden visas. And Martin, yes, they would, and no, they wouldn't. It depends on the same criteria as everything else. So yes, commercial property it would have to be in the right area. It would have to be at the right value. So if you were buying an existing business, for example, in Lisbon, it would have to be at that $500,000 level. And obviously then you're taking on the liability and the responsibility for the running the business, so to speak. So it very much depends on your circumstances. And again, we can perhaps connect afterwards to help you in a bit more detail. I think the key to it with Ed's presentation is that this or these programs are relatively risk-free. They're not necessarily places you would live unless you want to go for the high-end properties of, you know, $1 million, 1.5, 2.5. And don't get me wrong, there are people who want to do that, but this program is pretty much more about getting your residency and the benefits that come with that, and then the passport if you want to do it. And again, you've got multiple options either way. So Martin, I hope that answers your question. I've also had a question coming in from an existing client who's WhatsApped me, Rob, who's in the UK. He just wants to ask, in terms of the healthcare provision and also university education. So when you get your, perhaps Ed, you'd be best to answer this, but when you get your residency, does that allow you to access those services straight away? Is there waiting period? Or, you know, for example, if I've got a 17-year-old you know, daughter who was thinking about going to university in Paris, you know, do you know how that works?
Sure. So healthcare first. So yeah, when you get your residency visa, you are able to apply and join the equivalent National Health Service here. You get something called an utente number, which is basically, you know, your healthcare number that you use. And if you want to go and use the free healthcare systems, then you just give that number and they can identify you and use that system. So healthcare happens with residency. There's no sort of wait list or sort of qualifying time for that. In terms of education, so my eldest daughter's 14, so she won't get her passport until she's 19. So she would be, if we choose to, she would go to university in Portugal, presumably in Lisbon, and would just be paying the local rates that a Portuguese resident would pay, which is, I think it's like 1,000 or 2,000 euros a year to go to university in Lisbon. We may choose that she might take a year out, therefore wait until she has her EU passport, and then she could choose to go to university anywhere in the EU and also be treated as a local resident and pay the local sort of EU fees rather than the much higher non-EU fees.
Wow. Okay, good. Okay, that's a great benefit. Okay, thank you for that. I think pretty much that's it really, other than just to say thank you for everybody that's attended. Particularly thank you to Ed. It's quite a lot of detail there, and he's gone through that in a very patient fashion. So thank you very much. On the screen now, you've got our contact details, myself, Ed, and Adrian. Obviously, we've been in contact with, we will be in contact with you on a personal basis if you want any more further information. And really, that's it from me. Thank you very much. This has been recorded, by the way, and will be uploaded on our website in about 24 hours or so. It should be there. Ed, anything to close on?
No, thank you very much for everyone's time. Sorry it took me a while to get through all the slides, but hopefully it was useful for everyone. And as Robin says, you know, please feel free to reach out to us with any follow-ups.
Great. Thank you very much. And good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.